DCB has cool friends. We welcome studio scale modeler and longtime pal, Jason Eaton.
Hey everyone, it's DCB, and this is DCB Has Cool Friends, the show where I introduce you to all the amazing and talented people I know. Why? Because people with fun hobbies and skills are very intriguing to me, and I want the world to know more about them. So let's welcome our very first guest, my pal, Jason Eaton. Jason is an incredibly skilled artist who is mostly known for his insanely movie-accurate studio scale models he builds. He and I, quote unquote, met online some 20 odd years ago on the Replica Prop Forum, which was and still is a message forum where people discuss and dissect movie props and costumes in an attempt to replicate them as close to movie accurate as possible. There are literally thousands of members on there, so I'm not really sure how we crossed paths and stayed connected.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, like, I feel like I feel like the vast majority of the people, at least at the time, were like either ex-military or heavy metal people. So I feel like all the others like sort of glommed together and were like, I wasn't part of that scene. So like, I know, like, I sensed that you were a little more like artier, like me. And so I was like, I'm going to talk to him. He's fine. I have something in common.
We didn't actually meet face to face until a couple of years ago when you graciously let me crash at your house when I did my solo motorbike trip out east.
Yeah, I out of everybody, I think only Art Andrews and Tom Spina I haven't actually met yet. Still. Now it's weird. It's because I never go to conventions. Like, right. If I had gone to like any of the celebrations or whatever, like I would have met them, but sure, I just never go.
Okay, first question. Who are you wearing?
Who am I wearing? I'm wearing this.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know who did it. And God, I hope I bought it from the artist and not somebody who just grabbed, a JPEG and repopped it or whatever. But it was like, it was a whole line of vintage figures as shirts. So I'm hoping that the guy like was the artist, but that's who I'm wearing. And it's just a shop shirt. I feel like I've bought a whole, like these glasses, like I've bought a whole cycle of things that only last a couple of years, that no one's ever going to get to see in person because we've just been so sequestered. So it's very strange. Like, this is one of the shirts like I don't think I've traipsed about outside with much. So
you and I are both about the same age. I'm 50. I don't know how old you are.
48. Yeah.
We're both in that prime Star Wars age. I think it's safe to say that you and I, as kids, were probably a bit more obsessed and craved more of the behind-the-scenes photos and making of documentaries about Star Wars, maybe more than actually seeing the film itself. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I never watched the movies, but I will still like go back and rewatch the making ofs or just any making of footage, like obsessively. It's very strange. I shockingly will like not watch Star Wars for like a year or two, and then I go back and I'm like, oh right, there's like a whole story and stuff. Like I remember initially being into it for a completely different reason, but now I'm looking like in the deep background for something I haven't built yet because we've done everything else.
So you lived in Saudi Arabia for a while as a kid, right?
Couple of years, yeah. My dad was a computer programmer, and Saudia Airlines initially hired him to work on like mainframe computers, like Fortran and Colt.
What years were that?
80 and 81. So we were home for Empire, but by the end of 1980, we were in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
That's how I remember like timeline too, based on the movie.
Right. Well, and I remember like certain toys hadn't hit like a release when we left, so I would be in like a toy vacuum, and then suddenly some kid in school would have a Wampa, and I'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like, or I don't know, can I swear on this thing? I'd be like, "What the heck?" Like it was a total surprise because we weren't getting toy commercials, we weren't getting information like that.
So it wasn't a big thing there yet?
It was huge. It's just it was like on a time delay.
Okay.
Like getting the stuff. So like the kid that had the latest toy was king for like a month or two or whatever, like if they had gone home and come back with something, you were like, whoa.
Sure.
So that was kind of cool.
Was it like a universal bonding tool to make friends there or anything?
Yeah, it's a universal bonding now too. Like mostly, like I mean, I never got into sports, so I have very little to talk to most like 50-year-old guys about at a party. But if somebody's into Star Wars, I'm like, okay, phew, like hey, I can speak that language socially. Yeah.
I know you loved your Kenner Star Wars toys like most of us did, but did you also get into the models at an early age as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, my parents bought the Millennium Falcon model like when it came out, and we built it as a family because I was way too young to build. But I think it was an excuse for my parents to play, along with stuff because they were still pretty young, like in their late 20s at that point. And my dad really wanted to, he had built models. So, and my grandfather, one had built models like balsa wood and like, what do you call it, tissue paper over wings for like airplane fabric kind of stuff, and the other one did trains. So I came about it all very like organically because it was around me. It was a pretty creative family.
Were you pretty detailed then as well?
Yeah, I feel like it taught me patience because I burned through so many of those early models just wanting to get it. Like I thought I could build it in a day and it just looked awful, and then I was like, well, if I take my time, I guess it'll look okay. So, like I feel like that some of the disciplines were really good lessons to sort of learn. So yeah, definitely. And my mother was very cool about letting us trash the kitchen, making something messy creatively or whatever. Like, but I think back on that now, I'm like, I don't know how the hell she did that, like without going insane. Because we were like silk screening in high school. My God, I destroyed the basement plumbing with like, little balls of tape going into the drain and stuff. Oh, terrible child. Yeah.
So in your teen years, I assume you got more into girls and art and The Cure and sort of put Star Wars aside for a while, right?
Yeah, like the models went away as I became like, I guess puberty hits and you're like, oh, and then yeah, it went away. I distinctly remember the models came back out right around the time, like within a year or two of those Timothy Zahn novels getting released, like mid 90s, early mid 90s. And I bought a bunch of the model kits, and then like the Power of the Force figures hit, and I started buying those, and I was like, is this weird? Like people weren't buying action figures in there. Like my dad gave me shit for that, definitely. Like at the time, he was just like, well, you're a grown man, why are you buying toys? And I was just like, but because Luke, and yeah, like that was the fire being lit under me very slowly. It was like a slow burn, building those models again, the internet in its infancy, running across a proto RPF where somebody was, I have this weird fractured memory from like 94 of somebody talking about a Henksler counter, which is that little box on the side of the Stormtrooper rifle. And I was like, you can identify that stuff? And I was just like, oh my God, like it just seems so hard and insurmountable because it is and was. But like falling into that like stream, like you get excited, you think, oh my God, I might actually be able to like make those things that they made, which was always the dream. And then then you get that like, I got something to prove to my peers kind of like fire under you, which is sometimes a motivator and sometimes a curse. But yeah.
Were you into the costumes and props mostly at first?
Yeah. I wasn't into, it's funny, I did fall into the props first because that's just what everybody was doing on the RPF, and it was kind of like a follow along almost, like because people were selling them, and I was like, I want a lightsaber, and it was certainly easier to build a graphics lightsaber in 1998 than it was to build a X-wing or something, like for sure. There's just nothing out there. I mean, the people like Frank Cerny and Mo were definitely laying groundwork, like IDing stuff and that build, but that was still almost in its infancy. And I think like the Jedi training remote kit that Jeff Ritzmann had made, he was like the mortal enemy of Boba Fett at the time.
That's kind of a crossover between a model and a prop.
Exactly. And I was kind of like, all right, that sort of scratches both little itches there, which was kind of cool. Yeah, and the cosplay stuff, I never really got into the cosplaying, and I never thought ill of it. It just never, like, because I never went anywhere, like convention-wise. Like the model stuff is a very solitary endeavor in a way. And the I just wanted a really great Halloween costume, and I wanted to build a proton pack.
You kind of became a meme off of that costume.
Yeah, I don't know how viral mine got, but it was weird. It was because I was just like, I'm not the only guy doing this.
Right.
Like I have a really
Cosplay wasn't really a big thing yet.
Yeah. It was, a lot of people didn't understand. Well, I mean, I wore it to work. It was 2003, because everybody had to come in costume, or didn't have to. And at the time, I had a little red and white Honda Metropolitan scooter, which kind of looks like a Vespa, you know. And I'm wearing the suit, and I've got the pack on, and it's humming, and I was like, this looks like a little baby Ecto, like, you know, it's the red and white. I was like, it's kind of cute. So I was like, I'm gonna ride the scooter into work just for the hell of it. And it was like 8:45 in the morning, and I'm coming around the corner, and this is downtown Annapolis, which is an old sleepy colonial sailing town in Maryland. And I come around the corner at the city dock, and there's this building, Market House, and there was this kid holding hands with his dad, and I guess he was like, you know, gonna get Starbucks before dropping him off at school or whatever. And the kid looks at me, the dad's looking the other way, and the kid goes, "Holy shit!" And the dad turns to like admonish his child, and then he looks at what the kid's looking at, and he just starts laughing. And I like waved, and they're both like, "Hi!" And then I worked. I took the pack off the second I got to work, because it was like 40 pounds, and it was like, God. But I put it back on, and I had to work a little late, so it was like dusk, and everybody was getting drunk downtown Annapolis, and I had to go up Main Street to leave. And it was like I was my own one-man parade. Like, people kept coming out like off the street to like slap me on the back, or like, "Yeah, Ghostbusters, cool." And I was like, this is such a participatory thing to wear. Like, if anybody ever wants way more attention than you actually think you're gonna want, be a Ghostbuster in public. Like,
But that didn't entice you enough to continue the cosplay lifestyle?
No, I was just like, I can't wait to get the hell out of this thing and go home. It was fun. It was totally fun, but just not my cup of tea. I mean, it was cool, but like, and it was heavy, and like my back hurt, you know, by like after an hour of wearing it or whatever. And I was like, oh,
Right.
But yeah, but I did back that Hasbro HasLab pack, because I just want one like to hang on the wall.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm not building another one. I'll let them do it. So, it's a weird world now.
So you're mostly known for your scale models. I know you're kind of humble about your skills, but do you ever just stop and sit back and think about how skilled you really are?
It's taken me like into my mid to late 40s to actually say I'm an artist when someone asks what I am or what I do, because I always thought it was so pretentious and goofy to say I'm an artist, and then like then you have to explain yourself. You know, like, well, and also our culture only values it if it makes money, which is such a drag. Like, and it's so toxic. Like, people are like, you can make money doing that. I'm like, now I'm valid. Okay. But you know, like all that sort of mind messery aside, I never think I don't think I mean, I guess I can look at my stuff from 15, 20 years ago and definitely say I've gotten better, but I never think I'm like at the top of my game, and I never ever think I'm the best. I feel like I can always be better, which is great. Like, I would kill myself if, well, not really, but it would be awful if one day I woke up and was like, there's nowhere to go. Like, I can't get any better. Like, I'd be like, oh, like, I like knowing that I can improve my skills. And I've had to be really creative and bob and weave, because my hands have gotten messy, really, like nerve damage and whatnot, as I've gotten older. So I've had to sort of change the way I work, but it's ironically made me like better. So I'm like, all right, like, am I faster than I ever was before? Because like now a robot's doing some of the work for me. But, you know, I did it on the front end, and now it's doing it like at night while I'm sleeping, which is odd, but kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, like, I see people online building things, and I'm like, that's it's amazing. It's incredible. Like, and I do aspire to it. Like, Sean Side's doing that 5-foot Falcon, the A New Hope, you know, like with the 3 landing gears. The model doesn't exist anymore, so that's the only replica of that flavor that's done. And you know, like it's just my jaw drops every time I see a picture of that. Like, I don't want to.
When you see other people's work, does that motivate you or depress you more?
It always motivates me. It never depresses me. Even if somebody builds something that I was like planning to build or wanting to build, and I see that somebody else is like beating me to the punch, I'm never like demotivated or demoralized. Like, I think that's great because like how many of us are there? Like, who are you really competing against? I mean, there's 20 of us, like, come on, like, it's not, and there's no race. I said to my wife, Lisa, I was like, at some point in the past couple of years, I realized I have nothing to prove to myself or anybody else anymore in that way. And it was really kind of jarring, but really, really liberating because and I was like, I can just build whatever the hell I want now, like, and not like have a internalized pressure. Like, I don't want to make the best X-Wing anyone's ever seen. If it is, great. I just want to make the best X-Wing that I can. And that's sort of where it begins and ends. Which is a distinction, I think. I don't know. It's weird. I also get really in my head about this kind of stuff sometimes. I'm like, yeah.
One thing that's always impressed me with you modelers is your guys' ability to identify the teeniest Gribbles. For those who don't know, Gribbles is a term used for the small little bits of dressing that model makers put on their models to give them a functioning real-world look. These are typically teeny little plastic bits from automotive or military model kits. Is there any particular Gribble that you yourself discovered that had been elusive for so many years?
Okay, so I always preface anything I say about part IDs or Gribbles or any of that stuff with, I'm probably one of the worst people for retention. Like, I'm very, very, very grateful and lucky to have friends that are like savants at like military history and part identification, and they're incredible, and they know I will build the thing. So they'll tell me like what a part is, and I, go find it, snip it, and then I forget where I got it from, which drives other people nuts when they ask me. I'm like, I've identified a couple things here or there, but nothing earth shattering, I don't think. Yeah, and that's fine. Like, I know it's a rush though, because I've accidentally found things. Okay, so yeah, I guess I've identified parts and then been like, oh my God, and I get very excitedly told the guys, because it's like, it's nice to give back sometimes, and they're like, we already knew that, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I mean, like, for me personally, I discovered, like, I got the rush of momentary discovery. It happened in a vacuum, and it's also such a like minefield socially, because some people sort of operate under if I identify what that thing is, even if I do it concurrent to somebody else who just is keeping it secret and I just don't know about it, I still feel ownership and entitlement to that part, and I will lord it over everyone else like it's power. And I'm always like, it's a model kit. I mean, like, I understand you want to keep it quiet because you don't want the price to go up on eBay because everybody will go buy one and never build the thing, and that's maddening. But at the same time, like, it's just a BF 109 gun or whatever, like, God. So it's goofy to me, that whole like dramatic part of the Gribble identification scene. But I have to be honest and say I'm not terribly great at it because I never put the time in. Like,
are there still parts that elude you to this day?
Yeah, I just snipped and bagged everything for the Colin Cantwell Y-Wing, because I want to cast everything. Lately, like with certain things, before I build it, I have all the parts cast, just like the actual parts themselves, not like a kit of the model. And then I know everybody else is going to want to build one, and if I want to build a second one, I can build a resin copy. So it's sort of like everybody wins. And then when I get the real parts back, I will then glue them all together. So in grabbing all the Cantwell Y-Wing parts, there were two pieces that no one has identified yet. So I just modeled them in 3D as placeholders, because I can do that now, which is really kind of crazy. And usually when that happens, I go to all the trouble, which isn't a huge amount of trouble, but it's time and effort to model it, print it, clean it, compare it, size it, resize it, sometimes change it, like you go through a couple of versions. And then when you're done, some guy's like, I figured out what it is. And then you're like, all right. Like, so I feel like I'm summoning like the luck for someone to then identify the part.
Sure.
But I'm also okay with a placeholder in the meantime if it means you can finish something.
Sure.
What's your opinion on the belief that some people have that 3D printing is cheating?
It's just another tool in your toolbox. Yeah. Now, I mean, I get where that sentiment is coming from, only because I do see a lot of people who run to the internet and either get a free file or like a $50 file, which I feel like you're selling yourself short if you're only charging $50 for an entire, whatever. And then they like barf out a mediocre print and then, like half-ass sand it and then paint it. And they're like, I made studio scale, whatever. Like, I can see how that really, really gets to some people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, you guys should also understand that maybe this guy's like 19 years old and in college and is excited about the scene and is representing the new wave of people coming in. And my first couple things were pretty crappy looking. And if I had a mediocre 3D printer, I absolutely would have been doing that just to like get my like beak wet,
Sure.
like just to get into it. And everybody builds from it. And even if that person disappears and they never do it again, somebody's going to up their game. And that I think should always be encouraged. I think it scares a lot of the old guard too. I think there's like there's certain camps forming or maybe they've formed and they're just solidifying into cement now, where if you don't make it from the original styrene, it's not right. But that also has been said about resin copies for the past 15, 20 years. So, I mean, it's made a lot of stuff a lot cheaper, and it's made a lot of stuff not as accurate, but accurate enough for a lot of people. Like, I've seen some X-Wings where I'm like, looks like an X-Wing. If you've studied the X-Wing, you see everything that's wrong with it. But at the same time, my mother would see that and go, look at that X-Wing,
Right.
so who cares? Like, if it makes you happy, great. I'm not gonna waste my time getting upset about crap that doesn't matter. I do understand that some of these guys that like try to like make and crank out models like to sell feel incredibly threatened because they're being vastly undercut by these cheaper, okay-ish, builds.
Right.
That's kind of a drag. But doesn't that happen in every industry eventually, over and over and over again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty sneaky, sis.
Connect 4.
And we're back with more of our interview with Jason Eaton. Your
Yeah.
work has got the attention of a lot of important old school model makers from ILM, and you've since become friendly with a few of them. That must have been a surreal realization that you are now conversing with these model making gods that you only read about in books and idolized when you were young.
Yes and no. So yes, like the 5-year-old or like the 14-year-old girl crying at the chain link fence as the Beatles land, like for their concert, like like Ringo or Paul or whatever, like that lives in me. That sort of fervor, just ardent fandom, and it's I have to keep it at bay sometimes. So, but it happened very slowly and organically, and these guys like can sense like people cut from the same cloth, and like they're just friends. Like, this guy happens to have run the model shop for 20 years or whatever and designed like some of our most beloved spaceships of all time in our culture. But at the same time, he's like, do you want to get some soup or like at dinner? It's just like he's a guy, so I'm sort of Jekyll and Hyde or split, like when I think about it, because like, yeah, if I stop and actually realize like I'm legitimately friends with a couple of these guys and they're like they were my heroes growing up.
Right.
It's weird. It's very weird. And then you talk to them about stuff and like one of the nicest things anybody's ever said to me professionally, Lauren Peterson at one point was like, I absolutely would have hired you. He's like, it's just you 10 years too young and on the wrong coast, and I'm like like you can't get a better compliment than that.
Right.
Like it was really cool. And he didn't say it to be nice. He was like, he was serious.
Do these guys retain a lot of the old information?
Yes and no. I mean, like, it's weird. Like, some of them will remember very specific stuff, and then other times they're like, it was, I don't know, it was a job. It was 40 years ago. Why would I remember that? But then, yeah, like, well, Bill George is a like passionate model maker still. So he came in as a fan first. He was hired for, like after the first film. So his perspective is a little different than some of the guys that like were hired from like an industrial design background that like started it as a job. But they're all really friendly, and they have a love for it, and they will remember cool, weird stuff. And again, I'm like into the minutia of ILM. So I'm excited to talk to them about what their desk looked like, which I know most people probably wouldn't, and it's just like, that year we were listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac rumors, and the optical department was listening to Sparks, I was just like writing this, like, which album, like, oh, all right. Like, I find that stuff fascinating.
Yeah.
But they don't like remember parts they used or whatever. They will every once in a while they'll solve a mystery accidentally in a recollection, or like, we did do X, Y, and Z because this didn't work, and then I'm like, that didn't work because of this, and then I'm like, okay, cool. And you can put a timeline together a little better sometimes. Sure. They also a lot of them are pack rats, so they'll find like items or documents or something, and like, does this help? And then you're like, you're like, yes, it's amazing. Or like a snapshot that they took of like their friend or their coworker, and then sitting on the table is an angle that we've never had before of an item, and we're like, that is what the back of that looked like before, like they changed it for Empire or whatever. Yeah. And then you're like, so that kind of stuff is cool. But that all happens sort of incidental to just sort of hanging out, which is, again, weird to say out loud.
You've had the opportunity to visit Skywalker Ranch and hold and examine a lot of the original Star Wars movie models. Were the models more impressive up close, or did they kind of have that good enough for screen look to them?
Yeah, and if you ask any of those guys, they're like, we built it to last as long as the production was. We weren't building these for archival purposes. They were like, as long as it didn't fall apart on set, we were gold. So yeah, some of them are very, very, I think it's very challenging for the curators to stabilize a lot of those like items, because they're falling apart in some instances. But also, like, I look at them all, like they're all beautiful to me. Like, even if something's cracked or crazed or is discolored, I still think it's really great. I think it's funny and weird that most people still will paint their models to look like the prop looks like now.
Yeah.
After 40 years of like yellowing and and all that stuff. And they're like, that's the color. And I'm like, yeah, but if you look at photos, which I know also can lie, but if you talk to them, they said they painted it this.
Right.
And I bet if you paint it that and then wait 40 years in fluorescent light, it's going to look like what you just did, like. But that sort of realization freed me from, and being friends with them and them saying things like, just paint it how you want to paint it. Who gives a shit? Like, it freed me from being like hyper accurate with color in a way that the community has approved. Like, there are, as there are standards that everybody has come up with somehow. And if you don't follow that, you'll get trashed online. And like, it's still subjective. So it's like, how can there be an arbiter when there's really no way to know for sure? So it's weird.
So this is the difficult pick your favorite child question, but which model that you built are you most proud of, and why?
Probably that last X-Wing that I made. And I've been saying for a couple of months, because I am, but I just keep getting delayed. I'm going to make another one. Mm-hmm. The studio scale X-Wing, there's like 8 or 9 iterations out there that have come from various sources, fan made, pyro, like 3rd generation cast, things that have been tweaked, Captain Cardboard, blah, blah. But no one ever made the Hero. And real quick, if somebody doesn't know, the Hero models were made in a different way from the pyro models, which were designed to just be simpler and blow up, and were easier to cast. And those kinds of pyro models were what made it into like general population. None of the Hero castings ever made it out, but the Heroes are like longer and fatter, and that was on the lunchbox, like that I had as a kid. So like, I always wanted to do the Hero, and one of the ILM guys was cleaning and found a Hero shell and sent it to me. He was like, this might help, it's warped, but now with fancy computers we can unwarp it. Right. So I was able, with the help of a community of people, to pull off like a Hero replica. And then we tweaked it a little bit and changed it to personal reasons, but I wanted like the filming cockpit in there and not just like the little ILM guy.
Right.
Like, so it snowballed, and it's now not accurate, but it's gorgeous. And that, I feel like that pulling that off and preserving sort of the vibe of the hero was very gratifying. It was cool.
Is that going to be a kit?
I never made it a kit for people. I did make some copies, and yeah, I'll make one for myself. I made one for a collector friend, but like I don't do kit runs. I do onesie twosie things for myself. And if somebody comes calling, then I'm like, yeah, and like that, I always flip that to like buy more materials or fund another project or something. So yeah, it's just to keep the hobby going, kind of.
Are there models that you look back on and cringe? And do you revisit them and try to improve on them? Or once they're done, they're done?
That first X-Wing I made is very quaint looking to me. It looks very like oh, you thought that was good? Like the lights were just way too bright, and it was kind of gaudy, and the colors were all wrong. But there was at the same time I look at that, I'm like, hey, I'm trying, like A for effort. Something that like I want to revisit and make better. The B-Wing. And I don't, partially because my hands are so toast at this point, I can't really make garage kits anymore, like resin kits, because all that sanding and like carving and all that crap just kills them. So everything's now a scratch build for the most part. So when I revisit the B-Wing, I'm basically going to repattern it from like styrene, like the original donor kits and anything that.
Are you going to fix the original, or are you going to start from scratch?
Oh, I don't even have that one anymore. It's completely from scratch. Yeah. And because of the 3D nonsense that we have in our computers now, I think things that Bill George had used vacuum formed plastic for, like custom stuff that doesn't come from anything necessarily I can buy. I think I can replicate it pretty well digitally, like that front cockpit maybe. I don't know. Sure. It'll be a fun one. A slow burn definitely, but I want to do that one justice someday.
Yeah.
Which do you find more challenging, creating a model of your own design completely from scratch, or trying to exactly replicate a movie model using all the original pieces you can? Which is more challenging, and also which is more rewarding?
That's a fantastic question, because it's way more work and way more challenging to make something movie accurate using all of the original parts and doing all the research, talking to people who've done the research that you didn't do, and making that happen in a way that you're satisfied it reflects the original as best as possible. It's far more rewarding to make something of your own design, or like, I mean, and by my own design, I say like the Ralph McQuarrie probe droid, which you can see like back there. It's so much faster. It's so much more fun. It's so much more creative. I'm going to probably paint it a little coppery, which I know is going to give some people like agita or whatever. But like, I just think in the painting, it looks kind of brownish vibe wise. And I kind of want to, and like the probe droid has like a weird brown hue to it now. So I kind of want to pull that into like the prototype. Like weirdly, Lucasfilm hired me to build a model. I'm like, I don't know why they picked me, but they came to me and they're like, hey, would you want to make a model for Star Wars? Like, nah, I'm busy, like yeah, please and thank you. And it took like half a year, but it was so fast and it was so weird because like I'm gluing stuff down and then I'm talking to like, like getting the okay from like the art direction story group people, and they're like, that looks great, the design language. And I'm like, this is easy. This is so much easier than like trying to figure out what was used, just picking stuff off like just grabbing something out of a bin. I like this shape, like, and we're done. And I had mentioned that to one of the ILM guys, and they were like, yeah, that's why we think you guys are crazy, like in a good way, but like, it's way faster to just make something up. So yeah, I would encourage anybody who has made models to like make a prototype and don't get in your head about it. Like, just have fun, because it will be fun. Yeah, 100%.
You sell a lot of your models. How do you know which models to sell and which to keep? And do you ever regret selling any of them?
Yeah, and another excellent question. I had a relative die, and I had to help clean out their house, and they were kind of a secret hoarder, and it was like right around that Marie Kondo does it spark joy thing, and I was like, none of my shit sparks joy if I'm gonna end up having to like like hide my trash in drawers and stuff. Like, oh my god. So it was this weird like turning point where I'm like, I don't need to keep anything really. Like, I feel like it might like drag me down at a certain point.
Yeah.
So I'm not precious about like letting anything go, because I also have limited space. You see my house. I mean, it's from 1925. The rooms aren't very big. I'm in a very fortunate and lucky position where if I just build something and somebody sees it, eventually, if not before it's done, which is weird, somebody will be like, can I buy that? And I'm like, okay, let me finish painting it.
Sure.
And we'll talk later. So I don't have to like hustle like to sell anything. If I keep it for a couple of years, fine. If somebody like comes over and they're like, can I buy that? And I'm like, yeah, I don't have to ship it, even better, because it's so hard to ship some of those things. And then I don't have to dust it ever again, which is amazing.
No regrets?
No regrets. No, I built that like 3-foot Joe Johnson, Ralph McQuarrie Millennium Falcon, which was like, I wanted to keep that forever. When I was done, which is a weird, odd feeling for me to have these days. And somebody really wanted it. And my wife was like, well, would you sell it? And I'm like, it would have to change my life. And she was like, well, what would change your life? I was like, if we never had another college student loan debt. And I was like, huh. So the dude paid off the rest of my student loan, which wasn't like $100,000 or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but it was more money than I thought anybody should ever spend on a model. But yeah, the dude, and plus the burden for Uncle Sam, like, the tax thing. I also have to, mention that I pay taxes on all this stuff. It's all like, it's run as an LLC, like I'm doing one-off art pieces essentially.
Yeah.
But that was, and I didn't even wrestle with it. I was like, that is cool. I just got something out of my life that was like, like an anchor, like dragging me down kind of thing. Like I never have to, I'm debt free now, like besides the house, 100% cool. Yeah. It was nuts. So it's like, it was also like all those years that I spent buying Star Wars stuff. It's nice, to get back a little. Like, that was kind of cool. But now I don't regret it. The guy loves it still, and I don't think I'll ever even build another one. Like I got it out of my system, kind of. And also like, like we're all 50-ish, like how many more years can I build this stuff, like at an average of 2 or 3 things a year. Like I don't think I'll run out, but I also don't think I'm gonna like really plug away at a lot of crap. So it's being practical.
Do you get a lot of commission work?
No.
None.
No. I don't want any of that. In the past I did, and it's real easy to suddenly owe like a whole year's worth of stuff. And then you're kind of like, oh God, now I'm now it can turn into work, if you're not careful. Like now I just build whatever I want at the speed I want. Also with my hands being what they are, like if like I have a bad day and I'm like, I can't sand today, I need to rest, that puts the time off. And if I've agreed to a commission and it's like 3 months from now and the guy's kind of weird about it, then I'm like a jerk about it, and then I might like push myself and hurt myself. So now I just build. But that being said, none of it stays. So it's still leaving the house. It's just like there's no prepay
On your time.
situation. Yeah.
What other maker interests do you have besides scale models?
I really want to get. I've been watching too much Motor Trend, and I really want to get like an old Volkswagen like squareback and fix it up. But again, I'm like, I used to work on cars a little bit when I was younger, so I know I can wrap it's like a big model. Like I can wrap my brain around how a Volkswagen from like the 60s works. But practically speaking, especially because I don't even have like a garage right now, I'm like, I don't think I'll be doing that. I love cooking. I never did until my 30s when I realized food can be like art supplies, and like now you can make really good stuff. So I go overboard with that kind of crap, to my wife's delight. No, it's mostly just models still. Like assemblage art, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
Everyone I talked to wanted me to ask you this. You make about 27 models a day, spend time online, watch all your stories, have a full-time job, make super fancy dinners, go on long hikes, and have a really healthy relationship with your wife. So, when do you sleep?
I go to bed at 10.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes 9 if I'm real tired, and my body like a jerk wakes me up at like 4:30 or 5.
Okay.
Every morning. 5:30 sometimes, if actually I slept till 7 this morning and I was like, I slept the day away, but I was catching up. Yeah. I totally used to be a night owl. But no, I mean, like, people ask me that and I'm like, we don't have kids, and we just love spending time with each other, but we also like have like solitary hobbies. She likes to read a lot and is cool with me spending a couple hours a day on the bed, like on the bench working on stuff. So yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah. And I work, my full-time job is 6 to 2:30. So at 2:30, I've essentially gotten off for the day, and I've got a couple hours in the afternoon while she's still working that I can get model stuff done. Which sometimes I'm also like, braising something in the oven or whatever. So sometimes dinner, if it's going to be a couple hours of prep, like that happens, like I'm running up and down. But I don't play video games really. Yeah. I play Animal Crossing, but that's like 20 minutes a day, maybe, not a lot of time. That's more like a relaxation thing. But like, I think video games and kids are things that a lot of people have in their lives that when they're model makers, like, takes a lot of that off the table for them, which is fine. But I mean, that's usually the explanation that they're like, oh yeah, I guess you have more like leisure time.
Sure.
So yeah, I do sleep. But I also will sometimes fall asleep thinking about how something's going to go together. Like I will solve model problems in my sleep, or when I'm showering and I'm not quite fully awake. Yep. And by the time like I'm toweling off, I'm like, I gotta remember that's how I'm going to do this, because sometimes that also goes away. So yeah.
Well, that's about all I have for you now. Where can we see more of your work?
JasonEatonStudio.com, and then apparently on everybody's wall on Facebook, unless you hide me, which is fine. I literally was hanging out with somebody and they're like, I hid you. It was too much. Like, it's cool. Like, I'm not offended. Like, that's fine. I mean, like, you and I grew up making zines, and you made those little flash websites every couple weeks, like you were always making like a new thing. So like, I feel like you especially understand like the allure of just being able to barf little nuggets out on the internet. Like, it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's all I got for you.
Cool, man. Those are awesome questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm thrilled that you agreed to come along with me on this inaugural episode of this new series I'm doing here.
That's awesome. Very cool. Did I answer everything sufficiently?
Yeah, I think you did. Anything else you need to add?
Nah. Have a good time all the time.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's all I got.
All right.
I know he's a little reserved and camera shy, but that's Jason for you. Be sure to tune in again soon for more exciting interviews with my pals. Thanks, everyone, and good night. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at sugar_frosted or DustinCropsBoy.